All right. So welcome to our Bible study. Good to see everyone. And here we are at Clifton Lutheran Church. My name is Pastor Jim Bixby. And we have been moving through sequentially through the Bible, through Genesis and now into Exodus. And we're now into the portion of Exodus where the Ten Commandments are revealed, the Decalogue, to Moses and the people of Israel. And we are onto the commandment, which I think is pretty famous, of honor your father and mother. So without further ado, we'll pull up the Bible here. Because it is our practice, Rachel, would you mind doing the reading? It's very simple. It's Exodus 20, verse 12.
Sounds good. Honor your father and your mother, so that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. Perfect.
Thanks so much. Mm-hmm. And just real quick, to what we're doing also is we've been comparing these to their antecedents, or to the parallel verses in both Deuteronomy and Leviticus. So to look quickly at Leviticus here, you'll see that it's very different. Verse 3, each of you must respect your mother and father, and you must observe my Sabbaths. I am the Lord your God. Interesting. We'll talk more about that in a second. But Deuteronomy is very similar. Honor your father and mother as the Lord your God has commanded you, so that you may live long and it may go well with you in the land the Lord your God is giving you. So the connection there being, this is about longevity, this is about flourishing. Honoring your father and mother is part of kind of being connected to a way of being that is fruitful. It's going to help you. Like if you're part of a good social structure, that means that the land itself will flourish and the people within it will flourish. It's important to honor your father and mother. Okay, I'm going to take this in totally a different direction for just 1 second here, because the idea that we should honor your father and mother is something that is not unique to Judaism, and certainly maybe doesn't even find its most profound expression. I would turn us real quick to the a very interesting tradition. This is out of Confucianism, which probably has the most explicit instructions around what's called filial piety. So how it is you're supposed to take care of your elders. And here this is from a text called the Er Shui Su Hao Sao. I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly, but it translates to 24 examples of filial piety. And 2 through 4 are the really interesting ones. Let me read this real quick. During the Qin dynasty, a boy named Wu Ming was already serving his parents in exemplary filial piety, even though he was just 8 years old. The family was so poor that they could not even afford a gauze net against the mosquitoes. Therefore, every night in the summer, swarms of mosquitoes would come and bite them. Wu Ming let them all feast on his naked stomach. Even though there were so many, he did not drive them away. He feared the mosquitoes, having left him, would instead bite his parents. His heart was truly filled with love for his parents. Okay, let's do number 3. Ko Chi, who lived during the Han Dynasty, and his family were very poor. He had a 3-year-old son. Even though there was little food, Ko Chi's mother would always give part or share to her grandson so that he did not suffer hunger. One day, Ko Chi said to his wife, "We are so poor and needy, we cannot give the mother enough to eat. And on top of this, our son is eating a part of the mother's share. It were better if we buried our son." He started digging a grave. When he dug a hole about the size of 3 chia, he discovered a pot filled with the gold and the inscriptions. Officials may not take it, people may not steal it. And then lastly, here, this number 4 here, wearing children's clothes to amuse his parents. During the time of the Zhou dynasty, there was a man named Lao Tzu, who by nature was extremely filial. He took care of both of his parents, provided for them with the choicest delicacies. After he himself turned 70, he never spoke about his age. He often wore clothes striped in 5 colors and acted like an infant in front of his parents. He would carry a bowl of water to them and stumble on purpose. Lying on the floor, he would cry like a little child in order to make his parents laugh. ranging from the absurd to the downright like horrifying in the case of like whether or not we should bury our child in order that our parents should eat. All of these, I think, strike us in the West as being backwards. I mean, you hear those stories and you think to yourself, this is absurd. The idea that that we would sacrifice a child for a parent is just, it's the inverse of how we think about things, where parents sacrifice for their children. I'm going to suggest in this, however, that when the Hebrew Bible comes to this question of where the honor is supposed to be given, it has a much more balanced, nuanced, and I think kind of perfected way of looking at things. Because while those stories are ridiculous, and certainly I think should be looked upon and said, no, 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 no. And also I hasten to add, by the way, that Confucianism is not the only tradition that exists in China or in the East in general, and has been critiqued by the other traditions of China for this sort of stuff and saying like, this is absurd, you can't do that. But given that that is absurd, the counterpoint to it is us right now, is the West and the way that we treat both our young people and our old people. And if you were to ask a lot of folks who are in the Confucian tradition or who are a part of this, where the ridiculousness lies, they would point to us and say, well, look, there's a culture where the children are in charge and where honor does not flow from child up to parent, but instead parents debase themselves to give to kids. And then at the end of the day, where does it end up? They end up in this sort of institutionalized factory setting where you spend out the rest of your days waiting to die, profoundly dishonored. And there is something to that. I won't disagree that there's something hurtful about the way we have treated our elderly people. So there has to be some sort of middle path. My suggestion is that it's going to be what we find in the Bible, what we find in this commandment and elsewhere in Scripture, both in the Hebrew Testament and also in the New Testament. So this is about, by the way, far more than just, honoring your father and mother. What's that mean? Well, first of all, maybe one of the first things to say is that note that mother is included, right? It's one thing to say honor your father and mother, or honor your father in a patriarchal society, but this is to say that both parents have a role to play, and in spite of which one is the one privileged in the society, both have an important role, both fathers and mothers. So there's that, and I would also say that honor your father and mother so that like it goes well for you in the land shows that the trajectory of this is about the future. It's about like, what does the next day hold? And that is something that I think is common to both the Confucian tradition and also to the biblical tradition. When I drop my kids off at Jewish day school, because it's a great deal and the JCC is awesome, and I love sending them there, we walk by this plaque, and the plaque says on it, I sit in the shade of trees planted by my grandfather, and thus I plant trees, hoping that my grandchildren will sit in their shade too. And it's such a beautiful parable that I think encapsulates this idea of the focus on the future being placed on the child. So parents do things such that their kids will reap the benefits, and that's the future orientation that the Bible shows. The Confucian tradition, believe it or not, also shows a future orientation. It's just a little strange for us to look at. The future orientation that they're inclined to talk about is that of agedness, or that all people grow old. So given that everybody grows old, it only makes sense to have structures in place so that when you get old, you are honored and you're in positions of authority. That natural progression also finds enshrinement into law. I think it's worth saying that because both of those have, I think, equal validity too. We do want people as they grow older to accrue honor and to have positions that are assured, because it's the way time moves. Time moves inexorably forward. But we also want the generations to accrue greater honor as they move forward, because that's also the way things happen. And these ridiculous stories out of the 24 examples, that's not helping the generations to move forward, right? If you don't live your life, if you refuse to get married, if you kill your son, those things aren't helping that progression. So one of the questions that I think that naturally comes up is, where's the balance? Where do we find that the Bible finds that balance? I think a great passage that shows it is Ephesians. Ephesians has this kind of encapsulation of this, where it says, and I will share it with you now. In fact, actually, Albert, would you mind being my reader for this? Can you just read 1 through 4 there?
Yeah. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, so that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy long life on the earth. Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord.
Very good. So this is the first one that has the counterpoint, right? So whereas children are supposed to do that, fathers, and presumably mothers as well, also have an obligation. It's a mutuality. It goes both ways. As children are expected to do something, so are fathers and mothers. It's not like the New Testament invented this, by the way. I always say that if you've opened the book of Proverbs, you've accidentally stumbled upon a parenting guide right in the middle of an ancient piece of literature that is all about how to raise little people. It's pretty amazing, actually, that exists there in Scripture. Now, I kept this up here because I want to talk about this next passage here. This is the one that starts to get things a little bit tricky. So the relationship of children and their parents has one set of notions around it, but let's look at this next one here, and I'll read this. Slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear and with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ. Obey them not only to win favor when their eye is on you, but as slaves of Christ, doing the will of God from your heart. Serve wholeheartedly, as if you were serving the Lord, not people, because you know that the Lord will reward each one for whatever good they do, whether they are slave or free. Yikes. That was used to justify slavery and the continuation of slavery. And let's hear the continuation of it. And masters, treat your slaves in the same way. Do not threaten them, since you know that he who is both their master and yours is in heaven, and there is no favoritism with him. Yeah, so that's a parallelism there, to be sure, when we're talking about children and their parents, and then also slaves and their masters. And whatever that was used to justify, I have to just flatly disagree with. I don't think that there is any way that you can say that the ancient institution of that slave master relationship looked anything like what was happening in America, or even today, or even should be used to justify that. It's wrong and bad. And the author of Ephesians isn't saying that that's the right way that people ought to be organized in life. He's just saying that given that that's the fact, here's how we're supposed to be. Nevertheless, the connection was made explicitly there for the first time that this relationship echoes what we see with our relationship to God, that God exists either as a master figure or, more comfortably for us Christians, as a father figure or a mother figure, a parental authority. And that is somehow embedded in this relationship of honor your father and mother, the same way that we would follow the rungs of that ladder up and say, yeah, honor your father and mother, the way they honored their father and mother, the way that we honored the ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, Joseph, the way that they honored ultimately the prime cause of all this, the prime mover, who is God, so that the honor flows upwards in that sense. The critique that exists of Christianity from Nietzsche draws directly from that. And perhaps you've heard this before, when Nietzsche looks at Christianity and says that Christianity is fundamentally a slave morality. It shows people that there is a guy in charge, and the only way that you're supposed to, the posture you're supposed to affect in relation to him is that of the slave. Bow down, show honor and deference because that guy's in charge and you're not. Nietzsche famously rebelled against that and said that people should take agency, take ownership, etc. I don't really have a beef with Nietzsche. I think he's a really smart guy and actually in many ways calls a thing what it is. But I think he might not have fully understood the gospel in this sense. Because at least for us Christians, having received the New Testament, when I see Christ and what Christ has done for us, I see that that mutuality is far more at play. And this is important because this is something people get wrong about Christianity a lot. People oftentimes say Jesus, who is the Son of God, did something to honor God by taking on the cross. But that's not what happened. God isn't the one who demanded. It's us in our sin that demanded that someone be sacrificed. And believe me, the person who did it was God. There is no saying that God the Father wasn't also on the hook for the things that his children, who are us, we are the children of God, created in God's image. He is the one who paid the price for us. In many ways, the example here is of the kind of love that only a father, only a mother, only a parent can give to a child. Whatever honor that we send back up that ladder pales in comparison. There's no way whatever it is we do or whatever actions we do or whatever words or hymns that we sing can ever come close to what's been accomplished for us. The honor really is fundamentally one direction. It flows down to us. And frankly, that's something that only God can accomplish. So that's kind of what I have to say about honor your father and mother. I think by way of coming back to where we were in Leviticus there too, that's the whole point of why it says, why this is connected to the Sabbath. So there's one day a week, please, at least just make there one day a week where you contemplate on the fact that you have been so deeply honored and loved and forgiven. And that, yeah, actually, to be honest with you, to name a person like your father or mother, hopefully, by whose actions you've received knowledge about that and in who's actualized that and turned it into practice, great. Choose a person and thank them. Maybe that person is your AA sponsor. I don't care who it is, but that honor deserves some sort of reflection. And maybe not reflection might not be the right word. In some ways, what it actually demands from us is that we pass it on, that somebody else comes to know about the love of Jesus, because you can't just have it stop with you. And that's what this commandment is, in my opinion. And I'm gonna stop recording.